Welcome to The Intuitive Therapist with Janis R. Cohen, therapist, clairvoyant, empath, and medium. Listen in as she takes a no-nonsense deep dive into real human struggles and how to resolve them. Janis will share channeled information from her spirit guide team, as well as angels and archangels, to help you master your emotional, physical, financial, and spiritual destiny. And now, Janis R. Cohen.
Hey y'all, this is Janis Cohen, the Intuitive Therapist here on the Intuitive Therapist podcast. I'm so glad you're here today listening to me because I want to talk about something that I truly believe is going to help you adjust to the unexpected things that happen in your life. And I call it the art of the pivot, and really is the number one secret to handling any obstacle that comes your way. And I want to talk about it in full today, and I hope that it helps you. So how many of you have heard the saying, you plan and God laughs? For those of you who haven't heard of the saying, it means that you're really never in control of what happens in your life. It means that you can plan all sorts of shit and all sorts of other shit happens. But I'll take it a step further and offer you a caveat to that saying. And it is this, that you are never in control of what happens outside of yourself, but you are in control of 5 things within you. How you think, how you feel, what you do, what you ingest, and what you expel. And that's it. The rest is up to the universe. I could end there, y'all, but you know me by now. I always have more to say. So I'll tell you about a conversation that I had with a client several months ago. And we were talking about how he felt stuck. His heart felt one thing, but his brain was struggling. He was at a crossroads in a relationship, and he only knew one response: to go intellectual and let his brain dictate this life decision. Did you know that we have 2 brains? The brain that's in our head, that big thing that's under our skull, and then the brain that we have in our hearts. A heart actually has a brain. It's true, I kid you not. For so many of you, staying in your brain is safe, and I deal with a lot of people most of the time who stay in that safe space up above, whether it's from a survival mechanism from growing up, or having to learn it as they have matured. It's that safe space. And there, in this thinking brain, in this brain space, you can rationalize anything. The challenge is, though, when you're faced with a decision that pulls at your heart, your brain starts to freak out. So how do you choose what to do? And when do you know which brain to rely on to make a decision? Today I want to talk to you about the head and the heart brain, and more importantly, how to use them in tandem with each other when life throws you curveballs. Each of us has a blueprint of what we want to see happen in our lives. Think back to a time when you were younger. Maybe if you're older like me in your late 40s, think about a time in your 20s. Or maybe if you're younger listening to this, maybe in your teens. What was your vision of your life? Did you have this vision that you'd become a doctor or a lawyer or a dancer or a big business owner or somebody famous? Did you see yourself married with children? Did you see yourself alone for the rest of your life? Every day, most of us attempt to have a structure or schedule for our day that includes the things that we want to accomplish. And each of us has a larger vision of what we want to accomplish and have our lives be overall. And I can tell you that when I was in my 20s and 30s, I totally saw myself married with kids, the house, being a stay-at-home mom. Well, that didn't happen. Instead, my life took twists and turns that I had never expected. And the funny thing is, y'all, my life continues to take unexpected turns every day. And overall, it's kind of exciting because I really never know what's going to happen. But then there are times where I'm like, please, let me just have an easy day today. But that's not how the world and the universe works. So I stopped expecting my future to be a certain way. Life has pushed me in that direction. So rather, I've come to the understanding that planning on things happening in the exact way that I want them to happen is really unnecessary. It's a waste of my time. You see, in this and in all lifetimes, we get what we need, not what we want, unless what we want is what we need to help propel our growth. Sure, there are days when you get everything done on your to-do list, but that isn't because of you. I hate to give you this harsh reality, y'all. It's because the universe agreed that doing those things were in your best interest. So back to my client and his big life decision, and to today's topic of the art of the pivot. My client is a very bright man, very strategic, intellectual man, street smart with a history of working hard. Actually, he's a workaholic in all honesty. But he's created a great deal of monetary success for himself, and there's a lot to show for it materially. That said, he has a guarded heart and has had a guarded heart for years. He played the field with great success, meaning dating a lot of women, and he's very suave, charismatic, and very handsome. And he had been single for a good while and had absolutely no intention of being in a relationship. His life was much less complicated when he just kind of hooked up with the girl here and there and traveled and just enjoyed being single. He'd been married before and wanted his freedom to play and to work as he pleased. No strings and no obligations. And then he met her, the woman who proved to be the game changer for him. The day that he met her, he told me, absolutely did not expect it, and he couldn't take his eyes off her. So he wrestled with his heart and his mind after meeting her. He kept trying to understand why she came into his life when she had, and when he had no plans for a relationship. And he couldn't understand why he couldn't stop thinking about her. He wanted to spend all of his time with her, and they did. Then he hit a wall. He hit a heart wall. They were growing closer and closer, and he began to realize that she had captured his heart, different than any other woman had. And he panicked. And after several blissful months together, he ended it. She was heartbroken, obviously, and decided that she needed to let him go, according to him. And she did. She walked away as he walked away. But it only took 4 days of no contact for him to reach a boiling point. He couldn't stand it anymore. He had to talk with her. He had to reach out, because really his heart didn't want to let her go. His brain had convinced him it was the best decision. He had been studying for a professional licensure exam, and he was drinking wine while he was studying for this exam. And the funny thing is, he told me, he said, Janis, I had been itching to talk to her, and I even shut my phone off. He said, so I wouldn't reach out for her. That kind of lasted about an hour, he said. So after a glass or two of wine, he turned his phone on and made the call. And they spoke about 5 hours. They talked about everything that had happened, his fears, his confusion, and his inner conflict. She told him about her deepest feelings as well. And it seemed that they were on the road to recovery. 2 days after, he was in my office talking to me about this phone call and this woman. When he spoke at length about his challenges, I pointed out that he really was a very black and white thinker. He remarked that he's always been that way, and especially when it came to business. He needed to be able to make swift decisions in order to steer his path and to stay on top of his game. The challenge was that his heart was in heavy competition with his thinking mind, and the two were clashing big time. He was, for the first time in his life, truly stuck between his heart and his mind. I talked to him about the pivot. I told him that many things aren't really black and white like he pretends that they are, and that with matters of the heart, there's a vast gray space within which people can make decisions. He was getting the picture, but he was still staying in an intellectual space about all of this. This guy was stubborn. But I pushed him to drop down into his heart, and I asked him a number of questions that challenged his thinking and tested his heart's intelligence. He loved her very much, but didn't know how to incorporate her in his life with his child. He knew that she would be an amazing partner. She had already proven that. A wonderful female influence to his child, but he remained conflicted. Long story short, they had another conversation a few days later, and he told me, she said, look, I'll give you whatever freedoms you want. We can work this out. But he told her he had to let her go. And he used his excuse that he knows that he's a workaholic and he won't have time for her. He said he couldn't risk, to me, he said he couldn't risk his child attaching to her or to someone if it didn't work out, and then his daughter would be hurt. And he was hell-bent on keeping his daughter protected. And I supported him in that decision to protect his daughter in that way. That's a good dad. And I pointed out that he was sacrificing what seemed to be a once-in-a-lifetime relationship that already brought happiness into his life, and that seemed to have a high likelihood of bringing continued happiness into his life. But he just wasn't ready for that, so he said. And they ended up parting ways. You might have experienced the same situation as he. You might not have. Your situation might have been with a job or a move or something else entirely. My point today is that each day our resolve is being tested and our ability to go with the flow is being highlighted. The art of the pivot that I'm talking about today isn't pointing you to play it safe, y'all, like my client did. I'm talking about you easing up on your expectations and your plan so that you can navigate life easier and with a better quality of life. We can always intellectualize our decisions and rationalize them away. That's the easy part. But pivoting, the art of the pivot, means that you have to think outside of your black and white mind and sit in the gray space and oftentimes make decisions from there, from your heart, from what your gut knows is the right thing to do. And it's often in the unknown that the best decisions are made. You see, we aren't supposed to know outcomes. Sure, we can try to predict an outcome, and maybe more often than not, you end up predicting the outcome probably about 50% of the time. But typically, even if you predicted a particular outcome, some part or parts of the outcome aren't even close to what you'd have imagined would happen. Can you relate? The art of the pivot is learning how to dance with the ebbs and flows of life. It doesn't mean you can't have a plan A or a plan B, but the pivot, the dance, the unplanned steps you take is where the magic happens. Think back in your life when you were presented with a situation or decision that caused you stress. You either went into your head to make the decision, or you paid attention to your heart, your gut, and made your decision from there. I always tell people that the decisions would be easy as hell to make if we didn't have feelings about them, right? Seriously, if we could separate our feelings from the decisions we have in front of us, then we'd be making decisions left and right without issue. But that's not what life is about, is it? Life is all about the feelings that come with our decisions. Those are the tickets to personal growth, to continuing or ending patterns of behaviors, to staying our course or changing it slightly or even completely, to go with the flow or to remain rigid, to remain in the black and white state. Learning how to pivot is key to handling any obstacle in your way because it gives you room to breathe, y'all, to try something new, to expand your awareness, your mind, your heart, and your life experience. Imagine if you were dancing with someone. Let's pretend you're a woman and you're letting the man lead you. Well, if you're a control freak, right, then you're not going to be able to follow his lead. You're going to try to lead, and you're going to be too worried about the next steps that you need to take if you're doing it right, or all of the other things that you would think about when you're dancing stiffly in his arms, trying to lead him. But if you relax, if you feel the beat of the music, If you go with the sway of his body and remain in the present moment, you'll be surprised about the kind of experience you can have. Life will lead you to amazingly wonderful places and to the depths of hell. And it's up to you to dance with it. It's up to you to sway and to move to your life's soundtrack. It's all in the pivot. It's in the way that you move when life shows up differently. It's all about the steps you take when life calls on you to adjust your plan or scrap your plan altogether. You don't have to be an expert dancer. You just have to learn how to let your life lead you like a wonderful dance partner. Trust in your partner, life, and sway back and forth and let yourself pivot and pivot and pivot. Magical things await you when you sway to the music. I hope you found today's episode helpful. If you'd like to learn more about how to pivot, or you're feeling stuck in your mind and your heart is tugging at you, reach out. My email is janis@janisrcohen.com. Phone number is 404-558-3971. If you want a reading or you want to do some more intense work to really learn how to become more flexible in your thinking, let me know. It would be my pleasure to help. And if you want to hop over to iTunes, go ahead and do that. Rate and review my podcast. I would love that. Just a few sentences. I've gotten such beautiful reviews, and I'm so pleased that y'all are finding value in this content. And I'm here for you. So I hope y'all have a blessed day, a wonderful week. And as I always say, live intuitively.
Thanks for listening to The Intuitive Therapist with Janis R. Cohen. If you like what you heard, the best compliment you can give us is to share this podcast with a friend and subscribe, rate, and review at iTunes.